and I'll be your companion as we slip into the liminal. Relax and sink in with an open mind and an eye for the curious and strange. Come, let go with me. Hello, everyone. I am here with one of my favorite people on the planet, my good friend Keats Ross. And I participated in something very magical that Keats threw out into the universe and asked people to submit for this project. And Keats will get into the whole process here. And so I did. And a year later, Keats has come up with a piece of absolute brilliance, absolute magic. And I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of everyone that got involved with this. And the year is absolutely an appropriate amount of time when you're doing something on this level. And so with that, I'm going to welcome in Keats Ross. Hello.
Hey, it's so good to hear from you. Thank you for having me. This is, it's going to be very, I did, when I completed this, I completed it on the 4-year anniversary of my big magical working under the Oregon total eclipse.
Oh, wow.
And so it was like this, kind of completing a circle and, talking with you and wrapping this up in a way is like the perfect kind of cherry,
I love, and because this is a magical operation, so to have an end date when you wrapped be significant for you in your life, and anyone who's followed your work understands how significant that original working was. This is a big deal, and I think you can feel it. You can feel the energy from everyone else, but I really got a deep sense of you throughout this whole piece. Of course, you weave it together. But there is something extra here, Keats.
That's so great to hear. It's weird when you release something into the world. I personally have sort of a postpartum depression about it, and especially something that has been gestating and in the forefront of my mind and praxis for like over a year, right? So when it's everybody else's, it's hard to kind of visualize it from the outside and see just how intricate people can dissect it. And, hearing good things from you and the other participants in this has been very relieving,
Yeah, I know you were nervous about that. And when all the submissions came in and all that, I know, we had talked that you were trying to see the light. And also, how these magical things kind of weave themselves and come together in ways we don't expect. And so it's been interesting and fun to see how this unfolded and became, so to speak.
Yeah, and it really did. It was just kind of a fever dream in the height of, whatever this pandemic was, right, of the quarantine. I think it was April of that year. And we had just got done doing the Saturday Sideshow, which was this, this magnum opus of live streamers kind of coming together and doing some artistic stuff. And, I figured it was time for another big audio working. And at first, one of the main things I had was I needed to be very communicative to all the participants. And I tried to do that. I, throughout the year would give people updates and I would ask people permission to kind of, mangle or retool their submissions, like if it was okay. My big thing with this is, even though there's a lot of me in it and I really kind of, put myself really into it, it was very important to me to still have the individual anarchic sensibilities of all the people that were in it revered as well.
You accomplished that. And this was a struggle you went through and trying to honor that. And you definitely accomplished it, though. When I've listened to it many times now, and it's just better each time. And I'm not really one to do that, too. It's interesting that I keep listening to it. I let things go. I have my time while I'm making them. I let them go, and I kind of just go to the next thing. And even though this wasn't my baby, I put in a baby into the basket. Yeah. And so it was interesting to see how this was going to weave into everyone else's. And there's a lot of different stuff going on here. There's a lot of different types of voices. There's a lot of different messaging. And I mean, you just did it. And I think that there was a perfect amount of you in this because it needed that to really link everything together and make it a cohesive single piece that is now being exhibited in the world.
And part of the Audiomantic process was I didn't want to it wasn't a compilation. You know what I mean? It couldn't have been that. It had to be tethered together. It had to be woven together. And at first I was going to, maybe through some mastering trickery, weave them all in. And I just thought, what a cop-out. Like, I'm in no rush to do this. Why don't I create a sub-album of tethers to kind of, fully recorded music? I even kind of released kind of a sub-album just to people who were interested, as I was finishing up, that were really inspired by everyone's submissions. And, the whole point of it was that it would have these this minutia that would just be like these torrid torrents kind of interwoven, throughout this entire piece. I mean, that's what a hyper sigil is, right? It's a dynamic miniature model of, a magician's inner workings. And like, that's exactly what I set out to accomplish. And I'm glad that you think that it's not too much me, because I definitely think it's too much me, but you know how I am.
Yes. And I feel the same way. And this is why my videos and stuff slowed down, because I get tired of looking at myself and throwing myself in. And when people are around me, I use my friends are in my videos and whoever's around, right? So, and I'd like more of that, less of me, but ultimately we are what's around, and this is how that goes. I want to say one of the things that hit me hard listening to this is it really is, and I know you're using different languaging around this, but it harkens back to really great concept albums.
Of course, yeah. That's a dying art. That's a dying art, and I mean that's not an easy thing to do. It's, I've always said, as pretentious as it may sound, every album that I've ever made was a concept album, and always had a linear narrative, or non-linear, but it still had a narrative. And, it had everything was as a character in a way, or, written through the lens of something I was working through, or, just as a journalist kind of documenting the times I was going through. So, it's all concept. It's all, it's all narrative driven.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that is why I think I keep coming back to it. I continue to always go back to some really great concept albums and listen from beginning to end. That's what they were meant for. The Moody Blues come to mind. I mean, there's so many good ones. Sure. Yeah. And that process of traveling through a piece, especially an auditory piece, can be so transcendental if you allow it to be that.
Yeah, and that's why it was important to me to kind of mass release it as one track, because Bandcamp won't let you do that. They won't let you upload a 45-minute track. And so what broke my heart when people download Bandcamp, I have to put a note saying, in your media player, make sure there's gapless play, because every song flows into the next, and it's all strategic. Otherwise, you'll have these pauses and indents in between, and that breaks my heart if someone's listening to it like that. I mean, you could still, your brain will make the pattern that, oh, okay, it's just my audio player. But, it was very important to me that someone would listen to this in one sitting. Yeah. And even it's actually mastered so that if you put the entire track on loop or the entire album on a loop, it's a perfect circle.
I've experienced that, and that's one of the things. That's a nice touch. This is looping's a big deal for me anyway. When I'm doing my own work, I like, and so people in the world may not understand that, but it's one of those things where if I can loop something and I have to struggle to where does it start outside of volume coming in, I feel like I've done something good as far as auditory wise, that this could loop and you wouldn't know it until you're like, I think I've heard that before.
Well, and like a lot of my audiomancy practice it really is about being enveloped in loops and in this eternal return with different sounds and percussions and, meditative wise, right? It's these like ongoing chants that are, sometimes ostentatious, but inevitably like the obscenity of like whatever sounds you're creating once they loop, that kind of dissipates and you find this, equilibrium, this beautiful hum, and all the craziness kind of goes away and you find this like perfect center with it. And I think that's where a lot of my melody ideas come from, and a lot of where, lyrics kind of reside in that hollow earth inside that loop.
Yes. So with this kind of general introduction, and I hope this is wet everyone's whistle, I don't usually do things like this unless I believe in them. And even that said, even if I participate in something and the final project is something I'm not having, I won't promote it. And there are lots of things I've been part of where I'm like, oof, nobody knows. I mean, you'd have to be looking and you'll find. But fortunately, usually stuff's not under your name. It's under a project's name. And so let's get into some particulars. So when you first decided to do this, the idea springs up and then you make a note. I think I encountered it through Twitter or Discord. And so you put it out there. You're going to do this. You're inviting people to come along on the journey. What was going on there for you?
Yeah, so I posted it on We the Hollowed, and We the Hollowed has always been this, it started as kind of this small in-person collective, magical art collective in Portland. And since moving away from Portland and the pandemic happening, it did nothing but broaden my horizons internationally. And all the friends I've met through the podcast, whether they're in Scotland or Sweden, or anywhere. It just made sense to me to kind of revitalize another like audio sigil for, that to encapsulate all of the growth internationally that, we've had through this like weird little experiment that is We the Hollowed. And it just seemed like the right time. We were all just in our houses and streaming, right? It was this like weird baptism by fire for me with like YouTube culture and being on camera and like what sort of like content is made. And I felt there was just something missing with the interconnectivity. It was always so anonymous or weird or and I thought doing something intimate and extremely artistic would have been, to me, like the perfect antidote for the weathering these torrid torrents that we were all going through.
So when people started submitting, what was going on with that? Did you get so I want to look at the difference here.
So logistically, what I did was, I put a few guidelines. I said, send me waves, like a wave format. Try not to focus on soundscapes, right? I think when people think about audiomancy or audio, sound sorcery, I think their inclination is to think, ambient Brian Eno type textures, right? And so I wanted them to kind of focus more into how they would explain their praxis through sound and submit one track, all these anarchic people doing all these weird, wonderful things. How would you explain yourself through a 3-minute track, a 5-minute track? And, there were some logistical things, like it had, I needed a certain format, submit some writing if you want that. Yours, I think, was special when I got it because you didn't have much like writing for it. And I thought it really, pun fully intended, stood for itself. Because your track Stand, I thought was, when I heard it, I knew that was the one that was going to kick it in. Like that had to be track 2 or 3. That had to be doors opening, something pushing in. And so I was getting piecemeal ideas after every submission. And, from my history of sequencing records, like I could just kind of tell where one would sit well. But there are others, later that I was like, oh, this is completely opposite from where I thought it should be. But, as they're pouring in and you're getting submissions, you're listening to them, you're meditating on them. And then I had the idea, let me create a little sub album. I know it's going to be harder on myself, but, let's like really make this something. And I would meditate on different tracks, and that's how I knew where to put them and like what songs to kind of create, what tethers to kind of create to help tie things. So the tethers themselves are like, they're little sigils in themselves of, whatever submissions are around it too. So that it just feeds into each other, and then, I had my weird processes, which we could talk about.
Oh, we'll get into that. So, when I approached it, and I've always done this, and, I've lived my life as an artist and supported myself as an artist here and there. It's hard. How hard it is.
Oh, my God.
It's so hard. However, that doesn't change, the reality of what is. And so with submissions, I can get, especially in different colleges I've been in, I can be real rebellious. You know this about me. Mm-hmm. And I push against, I just don't follow in line. It's my nature, and thankfully it looks like it's in all my bloodlines, my parents.
It's exactly why I wanted you.
Yeah, thank you, baby.
And that's exactly why, like in that call for submissions, I was putting language in there to be like, be weird, like don't follow suit, like be brash, be crazy.
Yeah.
It was important. Dynamics was absolutely important to me throughout this whole thing, because in the past we did an audio sigil that somebody else kind of tied together, and it was really just kind of a band compilation with samples like in the middle. And it was great, and it was a good, it was great, and it was a good, like it was a good trial test for something like this. But I knew when I did it that I wanted it to be extremely dynamic, and that the music itself would not be found pretty much anywhere else, unless, there are some submissions, but you can probably find other places. But yeah, and so that was important to me, was dynamics and the rebellious nature of it. And when I got your submission, I was like, fuck yes, here we go.
Yes. I totally just didn't, I'm like, okay, I hear what's being said, but I also know Keats, and not only know Keats, we vibe. We definitely vibe. And so it was like, I'm going to just sit down and let it flow. And that's actually how a lot of my stuff goes, is auditory stuff. That's why I really love doing live shows, and that I used to call performance art. And so I did that. And when I hit submit, I knew full well that I didn't really follow directions on the surface, but I pushed into the idea of empowering yourself and looking within yourself to find what it is. And then when you see what it is through the magical art of projection in the world, then you can describe it. And if you can describe it, then you can move deeper into the relationship you have with this projected psychic content. And somehow that's what happened with my piece. And it was definitely part of this rebelliousness I feel towards what's going on the globe at that time, and my psychic visions of where we are now. And I thought, I just have to do this. And if Keats doesn't like it, he will let me know. And if it doesn't make it in, that's fine too. And this is part of that process of I've created it. I did what I thought. I created it specifically for that piece. I did not pull from anything else. It's not published anywhere else. It was specifically for this. And you ended up loving it and thought it was a good fit. And that was a stamp of approval, as far as I'm concerned, psychically for me.
I mean, not only just a good fit, but it became the call to arms track. It became like after the first, couple tracks of weaving, kind of setting the scene. This was the punch. You know what I mean? This is the dynamics that I was looking for. That it's not going to all just be spoken word. It's not going to be ambient. It's not going to, you know what I mean? There is no rhyme or meter for this thing, and yet at the end you'll see the rhyme and meter.
Oh, it circles. It absolutely spirals. And so with that, when I was listening all along, you'd post, we had, for everyone that doesn't know, Keats created pathways of communication on Twitter, at least, and sure other places, where we could all see and understand what the process was going on, where you were, and we could listen. A little too communicative. And so I was thrilled when I was listening to all the really amazing pieces. And there's standout stuff for me, as you know, and there's always going to be standout stuff. And it's not like when you say that, I don't want to play favorites. I'm just talking about me as an artist in the world, as a person. Me as a person in the world, there were things that just hit me hard. So, and one of the things that hit me hard was it's always going to be stuff you do. I can't love on your music and your vibe enough. And it's just there's something very magical about you, Keats. But that said, one of the absolute standouts for me was Michelle Embree's.
Oh, of course.
Holy shit. I actually have stopped and looped that a few times.
And that's actually from something. You can find that record. I think I did due diligence on the We the Hollowed, where I put the track list on the article page. You can go to her site, and she has a Bandcamp for that record, and I recommend everybody go to michelleembree.com and search this out. And LadyBabyMiss, as I call her, LadyBabyMiss. Was her companion and did the singing parts. Yeah. Oh, and when Michelle sent that to me, I knew that was the climax, or that was the bridge to the climax. You know what I mean? Like, it had to have some. It was dynamic enough. It wasn't raucous, but it moved me, and I was like, this has to be in the middle. Yeah.
Oh, it was so perfectly placed. I want to talk about that singing that's going on. Now, at first, I thought, because Mary June is your paramour, and she is behind the scenes a lot with everything you do, of course. And so and she's a singer and all this. And so she's an artist in her own right. And so I just assumed that singing right there was Mary June. But it turned out.
With Michelle?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I wish. Yeah, no. That track she sent she actually toured with, was like a spoken word album, I think like in 2017. And, that's one of the few tracks that's actually from something else that you can find.
Yeah. Yeah, I will seek that out. I didn't look at those show notes. So that singer, and then the other singer, who's the other one that was actually singing?
Oh, wait, so it's Michelle speaking.
I know, I know Michelle's voice. Yeah, so not just in Michelle's, in this whole piece, are there two female vocalists that are actually singing, or is that just the one?
Yeah, I think that's just LadyBabyMiss. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, yeah.
That person's voice is incredible.
Oh, yeah, she's very good.
Incredible. Yeah. Like I said, I've had this on loop, and I've had this around people, and a few people are like, who is that? Who is that? They're like, that voice is one of those voices that you want to sing with. Like, I was harmonizing with it. And so I wanted to make sure that no matter what's going on, I give kudos, however you want to say it, to that voice.
Yeah. Yeah, and it might be confusing too, because there's an Outletpress, Eric Millar, soundscape thing in between one of mine and Michelle's, and there's female singing on mine.
Yeah, so that's what that's what I'm talking about. Are these voices all the same? So who's the female singing on yours?
That's actually, that track is never before released, really. And it was something I recorded at the height of my dark year, amongst drugs and everything, in Phoenix, Arizona in 2011. Mm-hmm. And I put that there as, it's something I routinely kind of meditate and listen to as like this gem that came out of that year, where I played pretty much all the instruments, and just, there was two friends I had that sang on it. No relation anymore really at all. But to me, that was, in following suit with this idea of, each anarchic praxis, like, unfortunately mental health and addiction is part of my story. So it was important to me to include that as kind of like, a somber but uplifting kind of gospel type thing.
It's incredible. And like I said, that's why I keep trying to parse out. So here's the thing. Here's a little look. Here's a look into how I approach art. And I always approach art this way, no matter what kind of art it is. I have yet still to read through all the liner notes and all that stuff. I am still letting this.
Yeah, no worries.
That's why I don't know who's who and what. I know Michelle's voice because I know Michelle, and I'm a big fan of Michelle's work in the world in general, just her presence. And
she's the best.
Yeah, she's amazing. And so I knew that was her. And then I thought I was hearing two different vocalists in this whole piece that were like singing.
Yeah,
and so. That is what I'm saying. And so the look into the way I process art is I do not like going into art of any kind and being bogged down with what the artist has to say, because the art should stand on its own. And I don't need all that verbiage in the front to engage in a piece of art. Then you haven't done your job. That's just my opinion. I'm snobby like that.
No, absolutely. And when me and Eric Millar especially, who designed the liner notes and the cover and
Eric's
all of that,
amazing. We love him. Yeah.
Yeah. Just incredible. Like, honestly, just one of my greatest friends and collaborators. Like, this guy is he's a machine.
He is a machine. My God, the muse loves him.
I know, right? But we, part of what we asked for in the submissions was like, if you'd like to, send us a paragraph of, what this track is to you, more like a mission statement that you'd see at an art gallery, right? And some people decided to, some people didn't. I thought it was important for me in the intro to write about my involvement in each of the things to help people kind of realize that on Una Song's track, it's just her vocals and it's all my music. On Stevie's track, on Seyrath the Maid's track, it's just his vocals and all my music. And it was a part of also like, in case there's any blowback, you can blame me. You know what I mean?
Oh, you see, this is your kindness showing. But see, here's the thing. So as I was talking about how I present and go to art, so I want my personal experience. I don't care what the artist is at this point when I'm first engaging in it.
I love that.
I just want to experience what came forth, and then and go through the experience and have my relationship. So I've sanctified that relationship with the piece of art. And then at that point, and I've done this with albums, everything, then is when I start looking in at the show notes. Then's when I'm curious. Then is when I want to know more. And this is what's informed my whole world. Looking at albums when I was little and then, enjoying them, and then get into the show notes and saying, oh, okay, this person produced this. And then, oh, I see that person again. Or looking at that person's body of work, and you can get deeper into that. And I like that process.
Don't break the fiction.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, and it was very telling too, who decided to kind of write a lot, and who didn't. And it's just, that's the anarchic idea that we have here, is everyone approaches it differently and wanted to submit a picture of themselves. Carl funny submitted a photo of a dog, like a fake dog, for the liner notes, like
that's awesome. I still haven't looked, but that's awesome.
Yeah. And so like it's just all over the place. And I love how you approach it though. If if tracks are blending in and they sound like it's the same people, even though they are almost decades apart, in different areas of the country with no relation to each other, then I think that's a success.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I'm one of those people that I don't like to bog people down in all my accomplishments. And at my age, you'd be looking at a book. And so I just don't get caught down. My ego is not that tied into who I am on this earth. And so I tailor things to what I'm doing at the time. And it's a problem when I go on radio shows and other shows and, people want a bio. I'm like, ugh. I struggled with this shit in school. I've always struggled with it. It's like
you asked me on the show, you write it. It's like
seriously, I'm not having it.
Do your research.
And people are so offended when I say a creative person living a creative life. Like I have to qualify myself as I worked with this famous person and I've been on that and I've been in that movie. And, like that kind of stuff turns me off so hard and fast. I don't like that reality at all. And I don't live in it. No matter who I've worked with or where I've been, this is just my own thing. And I move forward with that. I respect that people want to, I guess, fly their colors and be proud of it. Be proud of everything you've done. And if you need to talk about it, you talk about it. I'm not judging that in someone else. I'm judging it in me.
Yeah, I get you. Absolutely. I think a part of it too was in the submission request, we had big ideas, right? And one of the big ideas was we'd print a little booklet, of high quality art, and Eric would take care of that basically. So Eric was taking care of kind of the design aesthetics and, the cover art and the booklet. And, I was taking care of just the audio sigil and all that. And he did a wonderful job. It's now just a PDF. If you download it, it'll be a high quality PDF. I also laid out all the pictures of the little booklet in a gallery that you can view on wethehollow.org on the article page. So it's it's just another realm of artwork for it. But when I posted the audio sigil on Pragmagick, there were no links. It worked out so that the article didn't link for the podcast of the entire sigil. And so people don't know, I haven't gone back and fixed it because I've been getting feedback oh, I love that one about the wolf. Oh, that one with the girls singing was great,
Yeah.
And as a part of me, I was like, I'll tell them if they want to know, of course, and I'll direct them to where the liner notes are. But it's up to you.
Yes, and that's the beauty of the mystery. So you're like, okay, I want to know more about this person or this process, and that's why I like concept albums too. So a lot of times with concept albums, there was really cool liner notes. There's really cool stuff that goes along with them. And like I said, when I get to that where I'm like, all right, now I'm going to put the analytic mind on and I'm going to go and look at all the components here. And that includes the people and what does each person bring. And so, I did look briefly when you were, and that's how I knew to change the name because my friend that does a lot of
document.
Yeah. And like Hagadaga, who does a lot of mixing for me with my projects, did the mixing on that on Stand, but he calls things, he has them, and I cherry pick. He makes them all for me, and I cherry pick what I want, and I usually am integral in getting to what they are. So
awesome.
We have an interesting process. We work well together, and
I did not know that. I knew that part of this talk, I really wanted to hear more about Stand and what that process was.
Well, it really was what I told you. It was that simple.
Yeah.
I sat down. But what I did do, so I instruct Hagadaga on, because I have no rules in art. I have no rules. So I don't have actually a patterning that can be followed. But with this piece, I was just like, I've got this idea, burgeoning, coming up, bubbling, trickling, moving through me. And it's dealing with all of the world stuff that's going on. It's dealing with my relationship with the world. It's dealing with the idea of what are we and where are we going and what are you and what are you as compared to me. And then the music started to come in and he called it a boogaloo. And I don't even know what I still don't know what that. I think it's a dance.
Well, yeah. And like the electric boogaloo. Yeah. It's,
is it a dance?
I think it's the Stand 2. I think it's like a film reference. It's a goofy sequel to a movie. Break. That's what it was.
It would be, I don't know. Like that. And that's Hagadaga. I mean, he titles stuff that I can't say on air, and so I just listen. That's just how he works. And I'll be like, I want more of this. Or if I'm around when he's creating, I'm like, we'll take a little bit of edibles and allow the process to happen. I'm like, ooh, more of that. And I'll get in and do the dirty work. And on all my work, I always list who I'm working with. So that was, he did that. I instructed it. And then I sat down, like I said, and it just came out. So that was that process. And I'm curious, how in touch with everyone else's process were you through the making of this?
Not much, like, to be honest. I didn't want to judge it before. So I heard, I took every submission like it was final. And I didn't want to, I didn't want, like you said, I didn't want to ruin the fiction for me. And what I did, you guys were privy to about 2 other drafts of the sigil, but there were tons that I would
I know you
take walks on, I would listen to. And every time I wanted, to ask how somebody got a sound, I thought, no, that's just going to entice me to kind of mirror that because I'm creating these webs, right? I'm weaving. And what's more obvious or on the nose than like bringing an element from the last track, and mixing it with the element from the next track. And so I figured, when they submitted, their writing about it, I just took them at their word. I'm a guy that's really obsessed with praxis. Like I do want to know. But it was important for me to have that not infiltrate how I was, handling the whole.
One of the things I think, just as a side note in here, it might be fun and interesting for you on your live stream or however you want to do it, is to actually bring everyone in separately and have separate conversations about how they got to the piece or why did they think that piece was perfect for this in the case of, like, say, Michelle, because that's what she entered and it was already part of something.
Yeah. And of course I've talked to Michelle about it. I've talked to many of them. There are some that just aren't as reachable, but yeah, I've had conversations. Most of the people that are on it, I've deeply talked about processes with, but nothing not rarely specific about the track that they submitted. Unless it was something they spoke about elsewhere. Like Derek's, I know, comes from something else, that, he was doing this kind of sound, scape synthesizer music, to the tarot. And that's where that was for the lust card. And so I knew that, I didn't get into the nitty gritty of how he pieced it together, but what I did was I took the second half of the song and created a song on top of it. And so you hear, 2 minutes of his track, and then it just weaves into something I just wrote and was, inspired by that track on top of the rest of his track. With like this broken acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful.
And so like I'm with you. I would love to hear from everybody. I think, as I said, I've been in sort of a postpartum depression about it, and it's been. I'm also, like I said, weathering all these torrents.
Yes.
In life, but I absolutely. It should be a series. We should just milk this thing because I think it does deserve. Everyone deserves to be heard. Yes. On this record, and I think it's important to me that at the end of the day, everyone is getting the reverence that, they deserve. And as much as I want to be mysterious about it, as much as I want to kind of just push it out and, let it permeate as it will, I think there's an impetus to kind of really discuss what this all means to everyone who's a part of it.
Yeah, well, this is the side note. So people encounter the art and then go from there. And this is part of that, like, okay, let's look at this. So let's take this time now, Keats, and let's look at, I want you to talk about each submission and the person that submitted, and let's dive in a little bit. Let's break this apart and look at the components.
Okay. Should we just go like through the track list?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way.
Okay, I'll try to be as brief as possible, just because there's 17 of them.
Yes,
but
we'll keep it in short.
Whiston, Tom Whiston opens and closes. He's the perfect circle. He's the one that tethers. Now, when he submitted this, he has a big writing on it, and I don't want to speak his words or put words in his mouth. But this was a piece that I always knew was either ending or opening the album. And it occurred to me, halfway through the process that it should be a ritual where you have the preparation, you have that that liminal bath in the beginning, and then you close the circle at the end. And it's just his track that does both. And he's amazing. He's in England. He also just put out a cassette tape of his own Audiomantic kind of things. And honestly, I'm not entirely certain how we got to know each other, but he's written for We the Hollowed. He's a deeply, just a romantic, a practitioner of a high regard of sound art. Very technical, but also, he's got his bona fides, as we say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
In magics. So, so I knew that he would be kind of the perfect circle, and opening and closing the ritual, right? And the second one is me. It's my prologue, my quick prologue draft of a long form fiction work that I've been writing for a very long time that I will finally have a readable draft of. But to me, there's what's been taking most of my magical energy is like living in this fictional space. The book is called Zozobra, and it is the death of this character that I've been working under named Dakota Slim since I was 15. And it's him traveling through the Bardos, but it's also historically accurate about late 1800s New Mexican territory. And it time jumps, and it's fantastical, but this was my door opening, and it quite literally opens up with a sample of a door kind of opening and closing. And it's about starting to burn the ghosts that are kind of creating drought in this town. And this Santa Fe in 1924 is, riddled with drought. So they're asking, they're seeking dark means to kind of help hydrate and kind of burn these ghosts that are torturing this town. And so that kind of that starts us off, right? And then boom, Stan comes in. And that's it's a revolutionary call to arms. It made perfect sense that after the preparation is for the ritual, the circle is drawn, that you stand, right? It's like, I don't know, I can't speak on it without being a little pretentious or too corny, but it really it kicks it in, and it made so much sense that it would be the track that shakes people awake, that this isn't your run of the mill, what picture you're painting in your head of sound sorcery, where it might be which it isn't at all. That was very important to me. And then we have Carl, of course, resonance Resonance.
Oh yeah,
Carl Abrahamsson,
he's a master,
writer of a culture.
Yeah.
Famous jet-setting, occultist and man of many talents, filmmaker. He submitted this and the Wolf Howls, and this one grabbed me because I'd been working with a lot of Anasazi and Zuni folklore for Zozobra, and it was one of those synchronicities that came in, of kind of this tethering of the self to get into a writing space. I used to listen to this track a lot before writing as like kind of a meditation, and it also kind of, now it tunes, right? You're punch up, you're high kicking now from your track, and then this is the orchestra tuning, so to speak. And then we have Miss Una Song, who I love dearly. She's amazing, and she sent me the spoken word track, and I loved it. And if you hear it, there's a part where she says she pronounces a word. I think it's gimlet. She says grimlet, and then she corrects herself and says gimlet, but kept it in there. And to me, that was
so fabulous, so good.
I love that so much, and
so
it
that
takes you out
to me.
It throws you back in, and I just knew she was one of the first ones where I asked, hey, do you mind if I write the music to this? And she was very generous, and she's like, yeah, go for it. And so I created a song to play underneath it, and edited the her track kind of around it too, so it's form fitting. But in the track itself, there's a MIDI drum beat that I created where I literally drew a sigil in the MIDI file, and so the rhythm you're hearing is a sigil pattern over and over again.
Oh, wow.
With like very noir kind of guitar and kind of this noir surf kind of feeling as you're like floating through these past lives. And then we have Mr. Outletpress afterwards, who made this album kind of like this Mandelbrot soundscape sound sorcery record that is really tethered throughout. I've put Eric is not just, the design person, but he also, if you listen quite closely, this album is cycled throughout. If it's slightly under Una's song, it's slightly under a lot of others, and it kind of weaves in some places as a form of like a palate cleanser to get to, something else. And it's like one of those, it's hitting a drum very slowly, after a big chanting session, when you're getting ready to do something,
Yes.
or to raise up against. And then, of course, we have Michelle Embree and LadyBabyMiss. And Michelle Embree and LadyBabyMiss, Sweet Eve, which, I think we've talked extensively about and we absolutely adore. And that I knew that had to be her cadence, her timbre,
Oh, amazing.
Pierced, with these beautiful vocalizations.
It gave me the
more
chills.
Melodic.
That's the piece that, seriously, and that's why I keep coming back. That piece just gives me the chills every single time, and it's the way it's done. It's the way it was executed and then presented. Amazing.
I mean, it had to be a centerpiece.
Yeah,
it had to.
That was the
after
brilliance.
All that came before. It's crazy if you think about just how much anarchy came before.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
Yes, absolutely.
And then we have another track from the Outletpress kind of Mandelbrot experimental sound sorcery kind of soundscapey record that kind of closes that loop around Michelle's track, because you need time to let the dust settle on that one. For sure. And it also, it pierces an in-between for the Dakota Slim track I talked about writing and recording in, my dark days. And to me, I thought that was also, I had recorded many different songs. I like I said, I've written an entire record, a 9-song record that is interspersed throughout this album. But there's some tracks I decided to leave off because after Michelle's piece, I felt raw, and I felt, as a part of who I am, it was an interesting moment to place a song where I talk about fessing up, to these dark machinations within oneself, and getting right with God, as they say.
Amen.
Yeah, and it just made sense to me that I felt vulnerable after the dust settled from Michelle, and was like, it wouldn't be honest if I didn't kind of express this side of me, right? Or like have a part, if this album is, or this audio sigil truly is about, anarchic individual magics, and I have kind of the lion's share of ability to kind of weave things in, I thought this is the place to do something just straightforward, right? So it's like probably the most straightforward song on there, but ain't no shame.
Oh, it's perfect. Like I said, this whole thing's perfect. I have some notes, and I'm going to get to them later after we get everyone talked about.
Yeah, and so after Dakota Slim, from we go straight into Vanessa Sinclair, who's like after the movements, because these are all movements in a big kind of piece, right? Vanessa was one of those where she either needed to be, I thought initially, early or late. Like she needed to have some sort of there's something like final about it. And then as I meditated and grew with it and decided to kind of be open with something a little more straightforward with my track, I thought she not only kind of breaks that barrier, gets rid of that, kind of straightforward Americana, whatever feel, and like takes us back into, here's the last chapter, or the second chapter.
Very well in that. Yeah. It also brought me into, and Vanessa's work always does this for me, is it brought me into the analytical mind, because she brings in a lot of that energy.
And, it's kind of obvious for me saying this, but after talking through the song, the narrative of the song before, being open about, drug abuse and kind of this godlessness, like I'm sitting on her couch and she's next. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm listening to her advice kind of through it. Or like, the pieces, right? And I mean, signal, signs, or synchronicities. It couldn't have been titled better. It's a reminder that, pay attention to those signal, signs, and synchronicities.
Yes.
No matter how dark shit gets.
Yeah, so important. Perfect messaging in this piece as well.
Yeah. And then one of my personal favorites, Sayroth the Mage. Mr. Stevie Ray of Scotland.
Yes. Oh, I've done some pieces with him alone, and you know this.
Yeah. And he's just, he's become such a genuine friend, through this rigmarole of whatever the past couple of years has been. And he sent me this poem. And that was another one where I was like, I have a melody to it. Like, I have this kind of, like, I after playing guitar with it and like meditating on it, I had something that was kind of a relic of a song. If you listen to it, it sounds very time capsuled. It's like there's break beats being used, but the guitar is very like, 90s. Like, it's like, I don't know how else to put it. It just kind of had this timeless feel by being so encapsulated in time. And that was all because of his poem. And so, I created the music for that. And, it's one of my favorites, actually.
I can't get enough of his speaking voice. That's why I've used it so many times. He's got the best voice.
Yeah. And that was Dream Boy. And then it goes into a me and Eric Millar collaboration where I use one of his Mandelbrot soundscapes and just build something dark above it. And this was one of the first ones that broke open to me that, I could go any which way. Like I had all of these, preconceptions about what I wanted to do for the Tethers. A lot of it was like vocalized. A lot of it was very kind of folky, and this was the one where it gets a little more industrial and electric guitar driven and dark. And I just followed as you say, I followed the muse on this one. It's not something I would normally create, but it was just like so haunting and very, snake driven in a way. And to me, it was like, I called it X Hex because it was this angry banishment to like, the troubles that I was having at the time. And I thought it was perfect under like this or after this, the clouds opening up and Saroth's voice coming in, and then you get mad. It's kind of supposed to mirror your stand on the opposite end, right?
And it does it. It's very perfect. That's one of the things. The symmetry in here is really impressive.
Yeah, and then after something so punchy as that, Soror star Melanie, who is Stevie's girlfriend, sent in her playing a foot harp, which is just a rubber band on her toe.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was the much needed levity. And so I kind of fixed it up a bit. They had a laugh at the end that I thought should be in the beginning as well, where they were, so it breaks in with their laugh.
I love that. It was one of those things that was very approachable for me, just like when Una corrects herself. So that was great.
Yeah, that's always been a huge part of me, especially, or just like what I'm attracted to, especially when you're marrying analog and digital formats. Like I want human slip ups, we want to know
we're human.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, if I was, when all the beats you're mostly here, or like the sequencing that I do, it's all me hitting different things, that I cut up, and then I'll just like, sequence in a place. So it comes from an analog or human element. It's like me hitting a chair or opening a door, or, jingling keys, or, hitting pots. Yes. But yeah, that's always been just, I have to have that, especially in this digital age.
So we move on from that piece.
Yes, and this is Derek Hunter's piece, Lust, Chaos, and Babylon, which I'll remind that comes from a record he did of synthscapes about the tarot. And the Lust card, this especially, which I think is basically just strength and other iterations of tarot. I think this was the Thoth deck specifically. And he, this, like, the strength card, right? Lust, especially after all of that, the humor before it, and then kind of bridging what I call like the third act, right? So I always think of like the foot harp as this kind of hopeful send off into, this conclusion. But, as we now know, nothing concludes. It just kind of loops. But so it's kind of a 2-part song, and this one's hard to discern. If you go to the Bandcamp, you can see how everything is parsed out track-wise. But this is the first 2 minutes of his track, and then it flows into the last bit of his track, but it's a different track with all of my composition on top of it. And I called it WaxWaner because it's it might be a funny word, but it's, as you were saying, with your producer, you kind of label things funny just to kind of save them, for a later day.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This
Yep.
was actually, I wrote this with a 3-string broken guitar during a full moon of last year. And, it was during like a full moon meditation, and I just named it WaxWaner, and it just stuck. And I think the piece of Derek's first part is the moon growing full. And I think, this with my music is it's like gentle shade into a new one. So that's what that was. And then afterwards, I also have a song called Knell. And this was purposely put here, but also inspired by all of the tracks before. And it's a bit more straightforward, but it's menacing and it's sinister. And I think, there's a lot of hope in the album, but I wanted to leave it on a don't fuck with me kind of, like what the character goes through, or like the listener is going through. It's like when you find your individuation process and, the anarchic kind of self and the magics and all that, there's a quotient of, don't fuck with me or we'll throw hands kind of a thing. But also, and I talk about, there's a line in like, we're in a playground now. It's like, this shit is open. And so the melody might be sinister and a don't fuck with me, but the lyrics are very kind of, playful and menacing in a way of our eyes are open now. Like I can see, but I can't hear sound. Like it's this very kind of self-aware, just because you're, the adept is never truly adept, right? It's, you got to be a perennial student. There's always going to be something you have to work on. And then, and that's why I called it Knell, right? It's like death knell. Because it is kind of this, shit, I did all that work, I got here, and there's still more to do. And that's what brings you into, this completion, ritual from, Tom Whiston, who opened up the entire sigil, and it loops perfectly around.
It is so good. And so I just had a couple notes I want to say. So on the part where you come in at the beginning with the story and all this, I was getting heavy, and this is, so don't take this wrong. Please don't take this wrong. It's a compliment, but sometimes people don't like comparisons. And it was giving me a heavy vibe of someone I really, really enjoy in the world, have really enjoyed a long time, and then had
Let me guess. Can I guess?
Some history with. You guess.
Tom Waits?
Yes. Have you heard that already from others?
Well, so the problem is, and I struggled with this, and this is a human thing. I left that line, what's he building in there? And because I'm reading the prologue, it wasn't ever, you know what I mean? It wasn't a callback to Tom Waits, but I knew when I spoke it that people were going to kind of make the comparison, or like it would, charge or remind somebody of his spoken word track that's like that. And I just decided against cutting it out because, I wanted it to mirror what it was on paper. And I think if you read it, it has a different rhythm or feel to it than, it does, as a spoken word track. So that was a hard one. That's one I definitely recognized was like, shit, people are going to think that's a Tom Waits thing. And it wasn't meant to be.
It doesn't come off as a mimicry or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's just and so it's not even that line. There's just a vibe there. And what I mean by that is there was a quality of the muse that I think he taps into as well. And so it's distinctly you. It's distinctly you, but it is something that I recognize in some of Tom's work here and there. And I love it. That's that's at the bottom line of what I'm saying here is I absolutely love it. And I think it's so perfect and appropriate with everything going on with this piece, and then getting the deeper knowledge here from you as to what its significance is in unison with this as a whole cohesive piece.
I mean, and that's a lot of the reason why I kept the line in, was because what's he building in there? What's happening? What is this creation, right? And I definitely feel that, but you know me, I'm like, I can be a little too like self-deprecating if I hear some sort of tether to somebody else and be like, damn it, that snuck in or whatever. But I think, I was concerned with the line, but I love that you still drew the conclusion or like the comparison, with or without that line, because Tom Waits,
Oh yeah, Tom's awesome. And another note I had here, I love, I can't love this enough, the name WaxWaner. I love it so much. I don't know why it's silly, but it's also kind of there's some depth to it, and it's kind of fun. But if you play into it, there's a lot of give in that. Just WaxWaner. It almost sounds like you could use it as an ad hominem. I mean, it's
yes, yeah. Yeah, it's silly, it's one of those that looks cool phonetically. Like you read it looks like those words should be cool together. But when you say it, there's something else about it. But that was one of the human elements too, was, I can give this some sort of deeply, thoughtful name. But I think being true to when I wrote it and when I was composing it, and that's just what I titled to save it, was like, no, I've got to pay tribute to that.
I find myself struggling with titles and names in life, period. And I mean, it's a thing all the way down to my work. And I have toiled over this process in the past, and now I don't care. And so, in fact, I really don't care about a lot anymore, especially people's ideas and thoughts about me and about what I'm doing. I've definitely well moved past those days. And so naming is interesting. And again, if I could just present work and nobody knows even what I'm named it, if you can just experience work, then you come to the name, or what did that person name it? Then you have, I think, more of a sense of it. And this is, there's that whole art movement that I can't even remember what it's called now, where you make stuff to be destroyed. It's like the flash temporary stuff. I can't recall
like Dada?
No, not Dada. No, more modern. In I think the movement was really big in around 2000, early 2000s. It went worldwide. I mean, it's a thing. I'll have to figure the name out. But
I'm sure I know it. I just
yeah, where people are creating I can't remember his name now.
Creating things to be eaten or destroyed or
even just the okay, so that's part of that movement. But other people that were, I wish I could remember my friend's name. I used to work with him, Daniel something. He's very famous for this art. So he creates all these amazing paintings on rice paper that is almost decaying the moment you start painting on it. And these paintings are amazing. And that's the whole thing. And I can't recall, but he introduced me to this concept. And I really stay away from concepts and movements as far as okay, I'm just going to, again, let something influence me and then see where I categorize it. So with this as a whole, how do you feel at the end of the journey? How did you feel and how do you feel now that this is out in the world? You've birthed it out and it's living.
Yeah. So as I've said, I think to kind of hang on the word birth, I always have a postpartum depression, because to me, it's about the process. I just, as struggling as I was, or as things were crumbling around me or moving states or God, who knows what other bullshit I went through in the past year or so. this kind of tethered me to a whole in a way. And so after releasing it, and I made sure to do it too, because things in my life right now have been pretty fucking haywire, to be completely honest, especially in regards to YouTube culture, the internet, personal things, blah, blah, blah. And it was important to me to have this be a celebratory moment amongst all of this shit, and also to, finish it. I literally finished it. I signed off on it under the full moon on the 21st through 22nd, which was the 4-year anniversary of that big magical working I did under that August full moon in 2017. And I just had a release about it, And not only did I close the circle, but I didn't have much. This was my magical praxis for a year. The audiomancy was really what I was focusing on. I released a little, I basically made a sub album to this too. And, I was just tethered, this was my shit that made me stay up at night. And now it's more into finishing this book, or kind of getting back onto a schedule for Pragmagick or whatever. And it was just a release, to kind of close the circle, do this big ritual. And the audio sigil was a huge part of that, was kind of a c'est la vie to this process that kept me sane for a year, to be honest.
Yes. So what kind of response have you had from all the participants with the final baby?
Nothing but good things. I am waiting to hear back from Una. I thought she was a part of all of our conversations, but I can't find her Twitter, so I'll just shoot her an email. But literally everybody has been stoked. And I'm not surprised if... I would be surprised if Una doesn't like it, because she heard what I was doing with her track and liked it. So I was always very communicative. It was important to me, there's a lot of pressure when it's other people's art, that are kind of in your hands for something.
Yes.
And I never lost sight of that. I never lost sight that, I can't just half-ass this, or, it's important to me to give reverence to everyone who submitted and, who's a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm proud of you, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this project, and with with amazing other people in this that I know, some of them personally and others just from afar. And it just is a work of art, a work of magic. It's inspiring. It's got a lot of relevance to what's going on right now, so it fits in to our cultural experience across the globe. Mm-hmm. And here we are. And so you did something really remarkable, Keats.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And, I love it too. Obviously, it's, I compartmentalize it differently. But just hearing it through your guys' words about it, or your viewpoints on it, it is absolutely wholesome for me that, okay. And, this is just an indent. This is well, we know we can do this now. What's next?
Yes. So. It was like our little exhibition we did prior to this. That was a great success.
Yeah. And you can download it for free on Bandcamp. I'm not making money. You can pay, if you want to, you can donate, but, download it for free. You get a high quality PDF. All the tracks will be separate, or you can download it through, just one track on wethehallowed.org/detritus.
Those are the details I wanted here at the end. Are there any other details as to how people can find you in the world?
No, I'm, pragmagick.com, has pretty much all of the, it's a link tree. So all the ways to get at me. But I do want to say, that's the difference. Is wethehollow.bandcamp.com. That's WETHEHALLOWED. .bandcamp.com is where it lives. If you want high quality waves that are separated, make sure to make it gapless play on your media player, and you'll get a free high quality PDF with it. Or as I said, go to wethehollow.org/detritus, and there's an option there just to download it as one complete track, and that article will have all the information for it, as well as the PDF in JPEG form. So,
are there any plans to make this into like an EP with the art from Eric and all this, with the the whole? Is there anything in the works? Yeah.
I will see how this reception goes, and then if it does, if it goes well, then I would love to talk about doing a Kickstarter to raise funds to print it. It's so expensive these days, but it was always my intention to have a hard print of it. Just how, we go about that, and we're just kind of seeding this and trying to get more ears on it. I don't want any gatekeeping on it. And I think we've all agreed that more ears are better than, putting anything behind a paywall. So, if people love it, I've gotten requests for the last two releases I've had to at least have like a CD version out. I think we've all become a little too reliant on digital media, and, it's really just a money game, to be honest.
Yeah, sadly. And you and I are, a lot of us are out there. We love our hard copies of stuff. That's why.
That's it. Yeah.
We're old school. And it's so happy to know that that's still new school too, because there's a whole movement in the world for people who want real books and albums and all this and tapes, and it's all out there. So
I have a plan for CD.
Do you?
It would take some work, but I have a plan. But I'm thinking a little bigger. I would love to formulate this on vinyl.
Yes. I would love to see this on vinyl as well. And as it goes further into the world, we'll talk more, and I can't wait to do more art with you. And I have a dream of doing something with you and Mary June and her vocals coming in and tying in and all that. So hopefully we can make that happen. But until then, I think we'll wrap up this show and leave it at this. It's been a great honor, Keats Ross. I love you. I'm so glad you're my brother in the world and that you exist, and you've made my life brighter. And I think a lot of people would say that about you.
Well, I really appreciate that. And, I really needed to hear that. So thank you so much. I love you too. And, this is just, like I said, this is just as you said, an exhibition. There's going to be so much more. We've proved it.
Yes. We proved it twice now in different ways.
Right.
And so thank you everyone that has come to enjoy this chat with Keats Ross and explore this amazing work, this audio sigil that a bunch of people came together on, and Keats absolutely wove something very magical that I hope you experience. Please leave us feedback as to what you experienced, what you like, what you don't like, give us feedback. We want it all. We can take it.
Yeah, be harsh.
Yeah, give it to us.
But be harsh with kindness too.
Right, be harsh in a constructive way. We don't need to participate in all the nastiness. Constructive. Thank you, Keats. Until later.
Yes, thank you.
And there he goes, Keats Ross. I'm very proud of this work, as you can tell, and I hope you find it as compelling as we did, making it and being a part of it, etc. I would like to thank the producers of this show, Christy Tesmer, Eric Peterson, Jason Lamson, Marcy Shapiro, Melanie Poe, Michael Wachter, Noel, Jeanette, Sana Rebecca, as well as the producing wows of Patrick Newland, and all the other patrons through Patreon. You are a light in my life. Thank you. And until later, let's just dream about art and beauty and the things that we can do to enrich this experience, because dreaming can come true. Dreaming can be true. Dreaming is dreaming, and we're all here doing it. Until later, thank you for joining me in the Cosmic Salon.